So my population for the assignment was Vietnamese refugees and acculturation in the United States and all around the world really after the war. And the main things I learned were first about what it means to truly be marginalized and acculturated into a society and country that's not your own. Um, as the book expressed, there's the different ways that they would describe and specify oppression, but the two that stuck out to me most were uh, marginalization, which is excluding a population from the mainstream society just due to them not fitting in with the dominant culture. So, in relation to Vietnamese refugees, this was, not knowing the language, not knowing the culture, basically just being excluded from things that people who are already living here would consider regular parts of life. So it took a long time for my family, for example, to be able to get to the point where we could understand the language, where we could be enrolled in schools, where we could start to understand the different societal aspects that came with moving to America. And this was hard for my parents and other Vietnamese refugees because essentially they were kicked out of the country with very little time, zero preparation, zero training, and kind of just dropped off into other parts of the world. So this kind of manifested as people trying to start a new life in a place where they couldn't even talk to the people who live there because there was a language barrier. And in turn, this just led to difficulties in getting jobs, just being oppressed due to being different, and the biases people have of labels such as refugee or immigrant or anything like that that still exist today. So there's a lot of oppression just based on that. And then the next one is cultural imperialism, which is basically the dominant culture is the one that makes the rules, and basically they stamp out anything that doesn't fit into those, and they create an experience that makes sense to them. And so refugees and immigrants kind of came to America and were expected to just basically learn English, learn our culture, learn our language, or get out. And again, that exists even to today. And what's interesting is me being a first generation born Vietnamese American, um, I found myself kind of pushing away from my culture when I was younger and basically just accepting the dominant culture exactly like I was explaining earlier. I would consider myself 99, if not almost completely American, with just that small portion of what would consider Vietnamese. And that's too bad because now as an adult, I wish it was a little more even. I wish I knew more about my culture, about my background, my history, everything like that. Um, but one of the things I found out while doing this paper was that it's very common that with each generation after the original one, less and less of the original culture is kept and more of the dominant culture begins to take hold. And I think it's partially due to, survival, but also because no one likes to be like their parents, right? You like to be differentiated. Therefore, your idea of individualism is moving away from your culture, your traditions that were your parents, and establishing your own. And moving to another country, we just had an entirely separate value system and traditions and culture that we accepted and were raised with. So these things in tandem all kind of create an interesting system where refugees of another country try to come and make a new life, but in turn they begin to lose their culture, and every generation preceding that it becomes less and less.